It is estimated that deaths by electrocution involving consumer products account for an estimated 290 deaths per year. Don't be one of them. Okay, right, the first thing we need to do is make sure we've got the right tools for the job we're about to do. First of all, we have a Stanley knife, admittedly rather a flash one. You have a Phillips screwdriver. Again, you can buy packs which will have all the different sizes in. It'll have flat screwdrivers in, it'll have Phillips type blade on it like this one here. A pair of cutters, again can be bought from any DIY store. Good pair of cutters. And last but not least, we need our plug, our replacement plug. Okay, now you want to make sure that your plug has the British kite mark on it. And now we've got the lid off the plug. And that's what the plug looks inside. We have a 13 amp fuse here, which is for safety. This will shut the power off to the appliance if something goes wrong with the appliance or the cable, if there's a short circuit. Right, now it's important. This is your neutral, where your neutral wire goes, which is blue. And this is your live terminal, and this is where your brown wire goes. And one of the most important is the earth terminal, which is where your earth goes. So it's important that all appliances that are earth protected, in other words class 1, which is earth protected, do have the earth fitted. And also fitted in the plug in such a way that it's the last wire to come out of the plug if the plug gets pulled from the cable, which I shall show you. Now first of all, we need to prepare the cable ready to put into the plug. Now the easiest way to do this is, I find, with a Stanley knife, but not everybody is confident with a Stanley knife, so there are actual wire cutters you can actually buy from your local DIY shop. Now the best thing to get the right correct length of wire to go in your plug is to, if you put the end of the wire against the top of the plug with your thumb, and then your index finger on your left hand at the back of the plug, that will give you the length of wire you need for your earth. We then use our Stanley knife. We then don't cut right through, we gently cut round the outer insulation wire. We just want to remove the outer cover. You can then pull it off with your fingers. Okay, admittedly I've been doing this for years, so I made it look easy. But with practice, and it's worth practicing on an ordinary piece of cable, an odd bit of cable, you now have your 3 wires. You have your blue wire, which is your neutral. You have your brown wire, which is your live or positive. And you have your yellow and green wire, which is your earth. The most important wire in the plug for safety. The earth wire, now obviously you have a clamp which clamps the outer cable, the outer shield in the plug, so it can't be pulled out. That clamp is very important. So the first thing we do is we undo that. Actually, I'm using the wrong screwdriver. Use the smaller Phillips screwdriver. Now you take the first one right out, try not to lose it of course, and then you undo the other one until the thread is just inside the clamp. If you can see that clearly there. So you can just move the clamp out of the way. The earth terminal, it can only go in one way in the plug. If it goes in, put it in the other way, it just won't drop down in place. So you have to make sure you get it round the right way. Now the easiest and safest way to me is to undo the terminal. In this case the terminal screw is actually a Phillips screw, and I think you'll find in most plugs today they're all Phillips screws. You undo it until the screw is just at the edge of the hole, so you've got a clear way through the hole so you can see right through it clearly. Okay, right, now the other important thing I need to tell you is that wire, this cable here, this outer shield, ideally needs to be in as far as this stop. There's a little stop there, you can see there, where I'm pushing the wire up against, and so that when the clamp is over it, plenty of the outer coating is past the actual clamp. That way you have plenty there. If it was any further back, then there is a risk that it could pull out. Okay, so you want as much in as you can, and you'll usually find there's a little stop there which you can push up to, and that's where it needs to be. Using our cutters, we cut exactly half of the earth wire. Okay, so we cut that exactly half of the earth wire. Okay, the brown wire that you see here, we cut that around 3/4 of the way up the blue wire. You can now see the 3 different lengths quite clearly. There's your brown wire, there's your blue neutral wire, and your earth wire. Now the earth wire is already the correct length anyway. We now need to trim back the wire so that we can see the copper. Now we don't want the copper to come out any further than the edge of the brass fitting on the plug, because if it did, this could actually touch the live side of the fuse, which we don't want. Okay, so we want to cut just enough, making sure that we've got our earth terminal there so it slides in, so we've got it the right way round, because it's easy to get it the wrong way round. Okay, so we get our cutters, and as I said, we only need enough just to come through the actual terminal itself. So gripping it with the palm of your hand, you can then pull that away. It takes a bit of practice. I make it look easy because I've been doing it for years. Then turn the copper wire, making sure that no bits have fallen off. You don't want to cut so deep that you actually cut the copper wire off, because you then weaken the cable. Okay, we then put our cable in. Now as you can see, that is slightly sticking out, right, which we don't want. Now ideally, the plastic sleeve here you see on the earth, we want it to go up against the edge of the screw, so it's actually inside the terminal, so you feel it hit the edge of the screw. But we don't want any cable sticking out this end here, as I was saying. We don't want it touching the fuse holder. Okay, so we can afford to trim a little bit off, like that. Again, just twist your wires back, and now there's very or little no wire sticking out. Now what we do is we then tighten it up with a screwdriver like this. Now insert it into your plug. And while it's in the plug itself, using the plug as your grip, you can now tighten it up reasonably. Not too hard, you don't want to tear through the copper wire. Now as you see, as I bring that round, there's the nice loop in that plug. This is the last wire that should come out of the plug if the plug would get torn out. In other words, if this cable was to be pulled out, then the live will come out first, then your neutral, and the very last one would be earth. In other words, the appliance would be earthed up to the point where it would be safe, the power would actually be taken away from the appliance. We need to cut our piece of copper wire, cut our outer shield. Take your time, there's no rush, it's not a race. Just grip it in your hand. Again, turning the copper wires, and you can now do the same with the blue one. again, we just want enough to go into the terminal. We don't want a load sticking out. Okay, so we now have our live, our neutral and our earth. We can now put our earth back into the plug. Now what we do is we get our Phillips screwdriver, undo the screw to the point about so you can just barely see the screw poking through the hole. We do the same again on our neutral, and what we do then, making sure that the earth wire is pushed in, we can now insert the brown wire into the terminal. Just bend the wire around a little bit, making sure all the copper wire is in place. Give it one last twist. Okay, then you can insert it into the hole carefully, and you just want the brown insulation wire just disappearing into the hole. It will stop when it reaches the screw. That way there's no copper wire sticking out, and there should be no copper wire sticking out this side of the plug. We can now do that up safely. Again, not too tight, but tight enough so it's not going to come out. So we now have our earth and our live in place. Right, we can now take our neutral terminal out. Make sure you know which way it goes back, because if you try to do it the other way, it just won't sit down in the plug. So it has to sit the correct way so it sits down in the plug. Okay, right, give that one last twist just to make sure that all the copper wires are together. We can then make sure that that screw is just poking through into the hole. So when we push our wire through, you have very little or no wire, no copper wire sticking out the back. Do it up with your fingers. Now get your Phillips screwdriver and do it up just gently. There should be no copper wire sticking this side of the terminal. We can now reinsert that into the plug by bringing the rest of the wire forward. Very easy. We can then push that in, and that's how your plug should be wired. You can now do up that neutral terminal. Again, not too tight, but tight enough. And now your plug is wired. That is the perfect way to wire a plug. Now, if this wire was to be pulled, if it was to be yanked out from the wall, somebody tripped over the cable, the first wire that would come out would be the brown one. So your live or your positive feed is then cut completely from the appliance. The earth is still connected, so the appliance is still safe. The next wire to come out would be your blue wire, which is the neutral. That means the machine is always earthed. Now, do the clamp up. There's plenty of sleeving this side of the clamp, so there's very little chance it will be pulled out. It would have to be pulled extremely hard to pull that cable out of that plug. We can now fit our cover. Then you do your screw up. Do it up reasonably tight, and now you see there's a nice closed edge all around that plug. That is exactly the way it should be. Well, that is the correct way that you wire a plug. If you follow my instructions to the letter, then you won't have any problem replacing your plugs or putting a new plug on an appliance. Till next time, be safe and take it easy. Bye.